You've got to define the path that you want to walk. We all have a journey, and the most tragic thing is to build something amazing and you're on top of a mountain and you look out and realize you built on the wrong mountain.
Today's creator is Colin Smith. He has over 30 years of experience as a professional creative. In this episode, Colin will candidly share his thoughts on staying relevant for so many years, the passions that drive his creativity, and his setbacks on acquiring a much larger company. Colin is most well known for running PhotoshopCAFE, a YouTube channel where he teaches Photoshop to over 311,000 subscribers. He's also written 20 books on Photoshop and drones. His creative work has been featured on Time Magazine and the New York Times. Recently, Colin worked alongside Rock and Roll Hall of Famer David Lee Roth on a few creative projects. That's quite an impressive resume, my friend. I'm really excited to have you. How are you?
Doing good. It's great to see you again, Jesus.
A lot of people may not know, but we're actually very good friends, so I do know a little bit about your story. But start by telling us a bit about your background, where you're from, where that you grew up.
All right. So my background's kind of interesting. I'm actually a double immigrant. I was born in Scotland, grew up in New Zealand, and then I came to the United States in the mid-90s.
Now, I'm going to have to interject here, and I'm sorry, I normally wouldn't do this, but I have to ask this question because I know the story, so I want you to talk a little bit about it. You're like the only person I know who has been in a boat for, 2-3 weeks? I want to hear about that.
All right, so I'm really giving my age away. I was on the Titanic. No, I'm kidding. But when we moved from UK to New Zealand, we literally went on a ship. It was a steamship. Steamship really makes it sound old. But that's what they did. And that was in the 70s, and that's how families immigrated. So our whole family went on the ship, and took us quite a long time at sea.
That's incredible. So how did you get into the creative industry?
I've always been, a creative kid, since I remember. A lot of the things I enjoyed was actually making scale models. So I used to build those as a kid, and that was like my hobby. And I would build those and I would paint them very, very intricately. And because I couldn't afford new models, I would literally tear them apart and rebuild them and paint them differently and then start cutting them up and making the doors open. And just, I did what I could. We weren't very wealthy, so, I had to kind of use my creative imagination to make my own toys and stuff, which really I think has served me a lot, today, because, that kind of the early thing is like, you learn to innovate, you learn to make do with what you've got and create things. And then as far as getting into the creative industry, it was something I always wanted to do. I didn't think it was even possible for me to do, especially in New Zealand. But then I came to the US. I wasn't planning on staying. I was just visiting for a while and studying, of course. And then I happened to just do a little bit of freelance. I did a little freelance job for a guy, and then his boss saw it, and then there was an opening at that point. And then they approached me and said, "Hey, we've been trying to find someone to do this. We haven't been able to find anybody. Would you be interested in doing this?" And I said, "Well, I'm not from the US." And I said, "Well, we'll sponsor you and everything like that." And I was like, okay. So that was basically how I got started into the design industry. Literally, that was my first job.
You've been in the creative industry for quite some time. And I actually started following you, Colin, at PhotoshopCAFE when I was in school. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you've been around for a really long time. And one of the things that I do admire about you, not necessarily just your creative talent, is how you manage to stay relevant throughout the decades, which is very difficult to do. Where does that drive come from to stay, for a lack of a better term, to stay relevant? Because I think it's very difficult to do. My hat off to you on doing it for so long.
Well, thanks for that. Staying relevant is important if you want to stay in business, but
for sure.
And it's not that I necessarily consciously say, what, I'm going to reinvent myself now. I'm going to become this. Mm-hmm. I'm curious when new things come out. I like to play with them, like I'm playing around with VR and all that kind of stuff right now. And what I do in PhotoshopCAFE, a lot of the things I experiment with, I don't share on there. That's just for me. And then sometimes that curiosity becomes a passion, and then I get into it, and then I really enjoy it. And then, what happens is I start to put out work. And because I believe the work is driven by passion, then you obtain a following. So what's kind of curious about, like back in my day, when I got started as a trainer, My path was a little different. I didn't get started as a trainer because I was really knowledgeable about Photoshop. What it was is the work I was creating was inspiring people. My first books and that came because of my work. And then, offers started to come in and people wanted me to write books and speak at conferences and do all these things because people wanted to know how I did what I did. Even like drones, I became the number one on SkyPixel, which is the DJI's social media. I became the number one liked and followed photographer on there. And that wasn't because I was trying to do that. It was just because I really loved it. And then when your heart's in something and you're passionate, you're going to seek out all the information you can possibly get on it. You're going to absorb it like a sponge. A lot of people my age stop learning. They stop being curious. You say, a child can absorb information in a way an adult can. And that's because the adult chooses not to. They focus their attention on other things, or they split their attention, or they lose focus or forget to look at detail because they just get so carried up in the routine. When I find something I'm passionate about, my mind becomes like a child's mind and just absorbs absolutely everything. And because of that, it kind of keeps you fresh. It keeps you on the edge. And my mind doesn't think like someone my age, typically does. It thinks more like someone like your age.
We're not that far apart, man.
You're not that far behind me, but you know what I mean. So when you find something new, and that's actually been proven. I'm not trying to get into the being a amateur doctor or a scientist or anything like that, but it's actually been proven that if a mind keeps learning, that keeps the mind malleable. It's like a muscle, right? So when you find something new and you're passionate about it, then I guess you stay relevant. If it becomes a passion and you stick at it long enough, you get good at it. I mean, and that's not just for me, it's for anybody. Like the difference between someone that's good and someone that's not good is passion. You'll be very, very hard pressed to find someone that's good at something who's not passionate at it.
I completely agree with that.
Because that makes you hungry. Otherwise, you just do the bare minimum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about drones, I was an early adopter and I'm looking for information, and I had peers and friends, that I was learning from. And eventually you look behind you and there's people following you. I'm not saying, there's people that know more about drones than me, guys like Barry and Romeo that taught me a lot about that side of it. Where my skill came is understanding Photoshop, composition, design, being able to put together images and understand what makes a good image. And then kind of combining that with the technology. After a while, it's like people are seeking me out and, they're always hitting me up like, hey, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? And then before I knew it, I had several publishers wanted me to write books. And of course, I decided to go with Rocky Nook because they're great people. They were just a good publisher to work with. And I'm glad I did. I actually just wrote my second drone book, just updated. That one's coming out next week officially. Yeah.
Wow. And what's the name of that book?
It's The Photographer's Guide to Drones, second edition.
Nice. By the way, the link to the book, Colin's YouTube channel, and all other resources we mentioned in this episode are on the show notes. Make sure that you check them out. So, Colin, did you always want to be an author?
Here's something I haven't really told. I don't know if I've told anybody this, but when I was a kid, I fantasized about writing a book or writing books.
Really?
And I remember when I was a little kid, I wrote like the first chapter to I don't know how many books, but never really continued. I even started creating a guide on how to create trout flies, how to make fishing flies, for trout. And you did that in Microsoft Paint. And so it just kind of started. So it was kind of a dream, but it wasn't something that I ever thought I would actually do. And then, then the opportunity happened and here I am, writing books.
Yeah. And let's talk about that, because I think that a lot of people listening might have those dreams, might have these goals. And I know times are different, people's experiences are different, things are different. But at least from your perspective, how does one get from having a dream to write a book? How does one go from having a dream to start a website, a YouTube channel, and then going forward to a place where you can call that a success, whatever success means to you?
Well, it's a long road. It's a long process. I'm not going to simplify it and say, hey, here's the 3 steps and you'll have a book and best-selling book and a website in 2 months, because you know what it takes to build stuff.
Yeah.
I think what it is you've got to define the path that you want to walk. We all have a journey, and the most tragic thing is to build something amazing and you're on top of a mountain and you look out and realize you built on the wrong mountain. So you've got to define what it is that you want to do, what you're passionate about. Be very careful what you do because you might just be successful. And so you want to make sure it's something you really want to do, because imagine it's like, hey, do I want to do this every day? And so I decided, hey, this is what I want to do. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I just feel lucky that I'm able to, work in Photoshop and Lightroom and just create, not just photography, but, designs, images, drawing, illustration, all this stuff. And then, so what you've got to do is, first of all, you've got to become a subject matter expert. So you've got to put in your time. You've got to know how to get from A to B, like I'm a chess player. So a lot of things I do, I start with the end and then I work backwards in my mind, also calculating all the different possibilities. Because when I play chess, you're playing 10 moves ahead, but calculating all these possibilities of each move. So you have to be strategic in your planning of what you're doing. But the most important thing is just being consistent and just growing a little bit each day. You don't have to grow in leaps and bounds, but just try to get a little better at what you do each day.
Do you think that someone who's listening to this right now, who may be a local designer, photographer, somebody who's not necessarily trying to become an industry leader, do you still think there's value for them in growing a social media following?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the marketplace today.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, you wanted work, you'd go knocking on printers' doors and working with printers and stuff, because sometimes someone says, hey, I want this, and they don't know how to design or whatever. So you literally had to go out and find work that way. Now everything's done, it's done on the mobile phone, it's done on the computer.
Generally speaking, how do you stay on top of things? There's a lot of new things. TikTok is new. How do you determine, what, I should do TikTok, or maybe I shouldn't do TikTok. I should focus on Instagram, or how do you determine where you're going to spend your time in? Because I'm in the belief that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So how do you make that decision?
I think I don't jump on every fad. That's like so key for me. Like, I've got friends that do that. They jump on every fad and then they're all in and they're like, hey, you should be doing this, and it's like, oh, let's see. I let it kind of prove itself a little bit first, and I want to see if it's worth me investing my time in. Like TikTok, definitely. I feel like even now I'm starting to get late to the game. I didn't go all in on Snapchat. I just didn't, and also, was it a fit for what I'm doing? Because, I'm doing training. So, not every platform is going to be a fit for training, and not every platform is going to be advantageous. So, I think you just look at that, like, obviously YouTube, to me, it makes sense, like, I'm creating videos. Why wouldn't I be on YouTube? Why wouldn't I be on TikTok? Why wouldn't I be on Instagram Reels? I mean, these are places that make sense. If you're a photographer, you definitely should be on these platforms, or platforms where you're sharing photographs, so people can see your images, because if people don't see your images, they're not going to hire you. If they see your images and they're like, oh, I need someone, oh, I like that style, that's the kind of style I'm looking for, then, I know so many photographers that go work that way. Yeah.
If you look at the demographics for TikTok, for example, it's people under 30. How do you create content for a younger generation? Do you think about that? Like, what's the advice that you would give somebody joining a platform outside of their generation?
If you want to be in business, it's really important that you have an audience that is growing into it. So I kind of take the Coca-Cola model. You look at the age group or the demographic that Coca-Cola targets, and that's for a reason, because these people are growing into it. So if I can get people using PhotoshopCAFE, or I can get people using my training at an earlier age, as they grow up into professionals, that's going to be the brand that they're going to use. It's going to be the brand they trust. And so you have to look, where are those younger eyeballs? Because I'm already reaching people my age. A lot have been with me for 30 years. They've read my books. They've been on PhotoshopCAFE. I go everywhere. People are like, oh, PhotoshopCAFE, it's where I learn Photoshop. Like, I hear that. That what was starting to happen is I wasn't hearing that from the younger generation anymore. It was just people like, older people doing really well in their careers, and I'm really happy that I helped them. But I'm like, okay, so when they retire, who's my audience going to be? And then I realized, wow, if I want to keep PhotoshopCAFE relevant, and this to answer, the first question again, I have to be constantly reaching a younger audience. And that was when I doubled down on YouTube. I was not taking YouTube very seriously. I had a lot of views, but not a lot of subscribers, because I wasn't really trying. I didn't have a strategy. I wasn't have a plan. I wasn't consistent. I don't know, what was it, like 5 years ago, something, 6 years ago, you and I were talking. And that's when I realized, hey, I really want to take YouTube seriously now, because I realized that the audience that I'm looking for are on YouTube. So I started learned a lot from you. You and I have had a lot of conversations, and, maybe I've helped you a little bit here and there too, but
Definitely.
and then just understanding it and saying, okay, here's my plan. So I have a plan. I upload every Tuesday, and the same as you upload every week come hell or high water. You and I have been at Adobe Max and conferences when literally, there's an instructor party, and we're not at the party because we're in the rooms creating content because we make sure we're not going to miss that upload because that's so important, right? And as I've done that, I'm seeing the results. Like I'm starting to see, like when I'm going to conferences, I'm having younger people are now recognizing my brand, whereas before they weren't recognizing my brand. So it's starting to bear fruit. And now I don't think YouTube's going anywhere, but TikTok is kind of the new YouTube in kind of a way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think YouTube is going anywhere just because a lot of younger people are on YouTube. But at least in my opinion, I don't see YouTube as a social platform, whereas I see TikTok as a social platform with video.
Interesting.
And maybe this is just me, but I wouldn't necessarily create a video for my friends and family and put it on YouTube. I probably would create a video for my friends and family and put it on TikTok. So like that's how I differentiate the two. Different kinds of content, and they're both valuable in their own way, which is why I don't see YouTube going away. And I can see TikTok staying around for a while.
That's funny because I see it a little bit differently. As far as like, social content, I agree with that. Like I'm just going to make a funny video or a fun video. I see something, I'll share that on TikTok. I don't care. I wouldn't share that on YouTube because it's like what you put on YouTube is so precious. You can't just put anything up there, because you're going to kill yourself in the algorithm.
And we're probably looking at it as YouTubers too, right? Yeah. Like we really think about posting something on YouTube. So I'm wondering if you're not a YouTuber, maybe your perception of what a YouTube video should be is different, and maybe you will put up a silly video. I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm not putting a cat video on my channel ever, but on TikTok or Instagram I would. Yeah, sure. But the other thing about YouTube is funny because I feel like, to me, YouTube is more of a community for me than TikTok, because when I'm on YouTube, and maybe it's because I'm not into TikTok as much as you are yet, but I know the people. The comment section is kind of really rich. You kind of go more in depth and show a little bit more of yourself in YouTube, whereas TikTok is quick, it's rapid fire, and you get a lot of views and stuff. But I don't know most of the people that are commenting.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I do think that you can, at this point in time at least, you can probably build a stronger community on YouTube. And I agree that with my videos at least, a lot of the people that comment, I almost feel like I know them because I see their comments. I've been seeing some people's comments for years. In that regard, I do understand what you're saying about creating communities with YouTube. I almost feel like TikTok is almost like a bar, where like you're just having fun conversations and, maybe silly conversations, but not necessarily a lot of substance, at least not yet. And I know some people do create very valuable videos with a lot of substance, but as a whole, at least personally, I don't see the platform as that yet.
I agree with that. You just swipe in, oh yeah, that looks fun, ha ha ha. And then you swipe and you're looking at things, you're basically feeding your ADD. But I'm definitely spending more time on a YouTube video than I would TikTok. There's channels that I subscribe to and I watch every video that comes up, like Casey Neistat is one. Some music channels, there's some guitar players.
My channel, of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
What I was going to ask you is, you do a lot. We mentioned the YouTube channel, the website, your client work. You're all over the place. Do you do everything yourself? Do you have assistants? Do people work for you? Like, how does that work?
Well, that is an interesting question. I have some people, that help out. Like Bruce Bicknell helps me. The live streams and different things like that. And then Matt helps me with the tech side. But if you enjoy a certain thing, once you start getting people and you start becoming an employer, you're spending less of your time doing that thing that you may be really good at and the thing you really enjoy. And now you're spending more time managing the people. But if you want to build something larger, that's what you have to do.
For the longest time, as you know, I was basically a solopreneur, and in the last couple years, I kind of started shifting away from that because I wanted to do more. I had the same mentality you have, where I thought, well, if I do everything, then everything's on brand and everything works exactly the way that I want it to. But then that slows me down and that makes me say no to other things that I also want to do. So these days, I'm kind of going the opposite route where I'm like, okay, well, what do I need? Now I have 2 full-time employees. Pauline, who is kind of like my content producer, and she helps me a lot with social media, copywriting, and Isaiah, who's going to be editing this podcast and edits my YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So I know that at one point you acquired a much larger company. How many employees did you have back then when you acquired the company?
When I acquired the company, it was just me.
Wow. How many authors and employees and people that you take on?
I literally got my first employee when I took over the company. And I think there must be something like 30 authors. And so there was a lot of things that had stalled. There was a lot of things in the works, so many unfinished projects and stuff like that. And, and that was a lot to take on, when you're not ready for it. And I look back and, I'm glad for that experience, but there was just so much that I was really over my head, let's be honest, initially. But because I was so over my head with all these different things, juggling all these plates, and suddenly I'm not doing what I enjoy doing anymore, and now I'm doing something else that I don't have any education or training for. So then I'm reading books like crazy, trying to learn. And it's hard to keep focused. Like, you're trying to keep a culture going, you're trying to keep a brand going, and also attaching another larger brand to your brand. It kind of really started to cloud the brand. And I realized, I couldn't morph the other brand into being my brand, because it wasn't. It was a different brand.
Right.
And of course, I respect, the pedigree, it came from Dean Collins, who was one of the greatest trainers, possibly the greatest photographic trainer ever. So, it came from an incredible pedigree. So anyway, it was, it was a lot of changes, it was a lot of growth, and, worked my way through.
How did you come up with the decision to let that go? And I know you still own it, but in terms of, okay, now I've taken over this company, 30 whatever plus authors, and you hired Mike, and now you're struggling, you're reading books, you're getting the company to move along. When do you decide, you know what, this is taking too much time and effort? What was that thought process like to basically say, you know what, I need to just let this go and create some breathing room?
So the decision was, really as at a crossroads, where it was like, either I'm going to run 2 companies, which is what I was trying to do, which was a mistake, or take the best of both companies, merge them into one company. And essentially that's what I did. So I took, the best of Software Cinema, merged it into PhotoshopCAFE. So, we have the authors, we have the titles, but PhotoshopCAFE was kind of like, I felt like it was a younger brand. So, it was a better known brand, particularly online. It was called Software Cinema because they literally, before the internet, used to go into movie theaters and show videos, and people would go, it was like a conference, but instead of having speakers, they would be on the screen and they would go into movie theaters. It was a great idea, but that time had kind of passed for that business model, whereas PhotoshopCAFE, as I say, was born online, and of course, it was a brand I started and was passionate about, and so that's essentially what we did. So, a lot of the titles from Software Cinema are now, they're available on PhotoshopCAFE. Any business leader, they come in, they make radical changes pretty quick, which is what I should have done, as I took too long to make those changes. Eventually I did. And then I realized, hey, we were doing trade shows. I was spending $30,000 a month on magazine ads. Here's a tip, by the way. If you want to get a cheap ad, ask for remnant pricing. I was in 8 magazines, full page ads. I didn't do half page, didn't want quarter page. As far as I was concerned for my brand, I wanted full page or nothing. And so I had a full page ad in 8 magazines every month. Usually cost a lot more.
And what did you call it? You asked for what?
Remnant pricing.
What does that mean?
Unsold ad space. Spilling the beans on the magazine industry. When you see a lot of in-house ads, when they're advertising their own things, that's because they couldn't sell that advertising spot. So they're putting a house ad in there. So a remnant ad is an ad that you can buy when they're like, okay, we're just going to have to fill this up. If you've got an ad, we'll let you have it cheap to fill a space, is basically what you call remnant pricing.
Got it.
And things were starting to move away from the physical world back to digital. I said back to digital because that's where I started. So part of the reinvention as well was like, this era is over. And so, we had a lot of customers that liked physical discs, but I had to make that decision of like, what? I love making physical discs. I love sending them to people, but it's just not profitable anymore. It's costing more to maintain the system, not just in money, but in time. And that's when I realized, hey, it's time to prune, time to reinvent. And that's when we went from more of a physical business to back onto more of a digital business. And then I found, I don't need the people that I needed to do the fulfillment, inventory, manufacturing, shipping. Like, I don't need those people anymore. So you're just kind of going into a different phase in the business.
That is definitely true and such a great lesson. You have to change with the business. You have to change if your priorities change. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, we're running out of time, but before I let you go, I want to ask you a few lightning round questions. Some of these questions are short and easy, others will require some time, but no matter what, just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. We can even discuss some questions further. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good. Let's go.
All right. The first lightning round question is, tell us a shocking fact about yourself.
I'm a musician. I play guitar, self-taught on the keyboards, self-taught on the drums and bass. Not good on those. I'm pretty decent on the guitar. And I fish. A lot of people don't know I like to fish.
I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't know you were a fisherman. The next question is, when was the last time you felt proud of yourself?
In a way, every day in a certain sense, because I allow myself to celebrate small achievements, because if you don't celebrate small achievements, then you're not encouraging yourself to keep making those small achievements. And a big achievement is nothing more than a combination of a lot of small achievements.
Well said. And you know what? I recently started doing that. You know this. I don't celebrate anything. That I just celebrated my birthday for the first time this year. I've never celebrated my birthday. I don't really celebrate myself, even accomplishments and things like that. And I don't know if you can tell, but in my background, actually, I have to my right here, I have my YouTube 1 million.
Oh, your gold play button. Woo!
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I remember I went to your house and it was like sitting in the closet, like facing the wall.
Yeah, it was under the couch. Yeah, it was under the couch. It came in, I opened it, looked at it, put it under the couch, just because I just don't like to, celebrate myself. So I just thought it was kind of silly to have that thing out there. But you were one of the people who encouraged me to celebrate more and to, regarding the YouTube award thing, to pull it out and have it in my background. You know this, Colin. I had a very difficult year starting with my health issues last year. So that kind of started shifting my mindset on, celebrating things, including small wins, because I would never celebrate small or big wins. So I think it's very good advice that you just gave to celebrate small wins. And a big win is just a collection of small wins. I think it was very well said.
Well, it's good. Well, I'm glad you got that play button now because, man, you worked hard for that.
Yeah, there it is.
I don't think people don't realize
how difficult it is.
You're like, oh, you got 1 million subscribers or 2 million subscribers. Oh, yeah, I'm just going to get 1 million subscribers. And it's like, it takes years and years and years of dedication and work. I mean, how many years did it take you to get to 1 million?
To get to 1 million, it took me about 6 or 7.
And that's working full time.
Yeah, and then 2 million was, almost 2 years.
Yeah, so, your 1 million, you were doing that, like treating it like a full-time job. It's not easy. I mean, you worked really, really hard to get that.
But it goes back to what you were talking about in the beginning, right? You got to find something that you're passionate about. Where are you going to build your castle? You don't want to build it in the wrong mountain. I was very, I thought a lot about all of that. Where am I going to spend my time and effort? What am I going to say no to because I'm saying yes to this? So it was very thought out in that regard. Obviously, you never really know if something is going to be as successful as you plan and hope for. In this case, thankfully it was. But to your point, it was, I did do a lot of thinking and I did follow a passion that I didn't mind pursuing even when things were difficult or you didn't see results. The first 2 years, I felt like I had nothing. I probably didn't have 1,000 followers in the first 2 years, so it definitely took a lot of time and effort. All right. The next question is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice I've ever been given actually was a guy in New Zealand who's told me, stop thinking about what if it doesn't work. I guess that's part of the Kiwi culture is like, oh, do this, but what if it doesn't work? And he's like, change your thing. What if it does work? And that was actually probably what gave me the courage to start to start PhotoshopCAFE.
Have you had an I made it moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I've made a moment because I don't know if you've ever made it. But definitely when I got my first book, when I signed the contract, not even like when I wrote the book, but literally I was living here and I went on vacation to New Zealand and they sent me the book of like, this is the sister book to the one you're going to write. And I read the book from cover to cover and I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. I'm going to become an author. That was like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What's your favorite city in the world besides the one you live in? And by the way, I didn't ask where you live because I know that, but I should have asked if I were a better podcast host because people listening don't know where you're at. So let us know where you're at and let us know what your favorite city in the world is besides that one.
I'm in Irvine, California, part of the greater Los Angeles area. And then as far as other cities, there's a couple of cities I really like. And one of them is Florence, Italy.
Love Florence.
Just absolutely love Florence. I could live there. And another one, which don't shoot me, guys. I really like Sydney, Australia.
Man, me too. You know what? You named two of my top cities. 100% agree with that. But I'm not Kiwi, so I can say that.
Yeah, I know it's terrible saying that,
yeah. But What is the most difficult part about being a content creator / photographer / author / being, having your career? The most difficult part about it?
That's when people ask me what I do for a living.
I can definitely relate. What do you say? What do you tell people?
I don't know. I always struggle. It's so funny. You think by now I'd have a script, or just something I say. Actually, I do know what we are now. We're called slashies, by the way.
What does that mean?
So a slashie is someone that's a creator / photographer / designer / videos. That means you have a broken up. So it's actually much more common than it used to be. Now it's a thing. But a lot of it depends who I'm talking to.
So you tailor it to the person that you're talking to.
Absolutely. I mean,
I do
do these things, you have earned it. So, why not? Obviously you're not going to say something irrelevant.
What would you like to be remembered for? What mark do you want to leave in the world?
I want to be remembered for putting my mark on creativity and helping forward art, because art and creativity are one of those beautiful things that unifies us. So many things in this world separate us, and art is one of those things that brings us together. So that's what I love about it. Yeah.
Today's creator was Colin Smith. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure.